诸位，有胆量就出来吧！
人类，你注定要死在我手里！雷神践踏，极限吞噬。
想逃哪有那么容易？
Hello everyone! Welcome to the Al Razda channel. Here, I will share spoilers for SwallowedStar episode 202. Remember, this is based on the novel and fandom.com, so it won't be 100% similar to the Donghua version. Okay, without further ado, let's dive right into the story. The story continues from the Donghua version of episode 201. When Luofeng met Silver Eye, he forced Luofeng to hand over his anonymous account to log into the virtual world. Standing in the sky waiting for Luofeng's answer, Silver Eye knew that Luofeng would be killed and his world ring inspected if he refused. Luofeng's blood boiled with fighting spirit, remembering how he had once bravely faced the golden-horned behemoth and stolen black metal in front of the green venerable and purple venerable. With 3 priceless treasures, armor, auxiliary, general soul, beast god level 20, and his own secret techniques, he considered the top 10 limit immortal king warriors no longer a threat and the 5 invincible immortal kings his main targets. He challenged Silver Eye with confidence, declaring he was not afraid of death and was certain Silver Eye could not kill him, even mocking Silver Eye to show his true strength as a legendary special being. The battle began when Silver Eye swung a diamond-like transparent palm, forming a giant crystal ice palm that chased Luofeng. Luofeng summoned 16 black balls that formed a beast god projection and tried to escape with Shiwu Wing, but his phantom tail had to face the diamond palm in a battle that reminded him of the ancient panorama of the Blood River continent. A violent collision occurred when the scaly tail struck the diamond palm, causing the beast god projection to shatter and the palm to crack like ice. Luofeng was amazed that Silver Eye, who was an expert in the law of time, also mastered the law of space with extraordinary power, and even his simple attack was able to suppress Luofeng's strongest attack. However, Silver Eye was also impressed that Luofeng managed to withstand his first attack and then launched a second, even more deadly attack. Suddenly, crystal fingers appeared in front of Luofeng as space froze, preventing him from teleporting. An invisible wave spread out, rendering Luofeng completely immobile. This was the time stop that all creatures feared. The cunning Silver Eye used his giant palm and crystal finger to distract Luofeng, then launched the time stop when Luofeng was off guard. However, with mental strength greater than most universe venerables, Luofeng forced his 3 treasures, Shiwu Wing, Star Map, and Tower Pearl, to vibrate and break free from the shackles of time. His Shiwu Wing successfully parried the deadly finger, and Luofeng was thrown back like a meteor. He realized that the main reason the time stop worked was because Silver Eye's power far exceeded that of King Lightning Racing. The other warriors watching from various places were extremely shocked when Luofeng managed to withstand the Finger of Death, Silver Eye's legendary technique that combined time and soul attacks. The technique began with time stop. Then, the finger contained a soul scouring attack that silently gnawed away at the enemy until they could not fight back. Even the other 4 invincible immortal kings considered the Finger of Death and Silver Stare techniques to be serious threats. Silver Eye himself was surprised that Luofeng was able to break free from time stop in such a short time, and that his crystal finger had no effect even though it had touched and begun to erode Luofeng's soul. Although attacking ability was his weakness, Luofeng's defensive abilities were extraordinarily strong, both physical and spiritual. Luofeng even mocked Silver Eye and asked him to show another technique, causing Silver Eye to finally decide to use his ultimate technique that had killed all beings except the other 4 invincible immortal kings, Silver Stare. The scar on Silver Eye's forehead slowly opened, altering the speed of time and causing the space to vibrate. The mighty Silver Eye body influences the flow of time around it, and the energy waves it creates cause space to vibrate as it unleashes its ultimate technique. Its silver-white eyes without pupils stare at Luofeng, causing space to continuously crack due to the divine power of its gaze. One by one, eyes appear all over its transparent body that is not covered by armor, with the strongest eyes on its face surrounded by a silver circle of light. That invisible power penetrates Shuwu Wing and Luofeng's general armor, and even the beast god's projection is completely unable to resist this attack. The attack penetrated Luofeng's soul and trapped him in an illusion. However, with his strong will, Luofeng continued to break through one illusion after another, even though the illusions formed as quickly as he escaped them. He felt trapped in an endless cycle of illusions for millions of years, but remained calm because he knew that the secret technique of the Silver Eye was indeed complex, and he had never encountered it before. Silver Eye, proud of his technique, was convinced that no one could escape the infinite loop except for the other 4 invincible immortal kings, and even they had to burn their divine bodies to withstand it. In the illusion, one had to endure hundreds of thousands of years of loneliness without rest until their will collapsed and their soul was destroyed. However, when the Silver Eye closed his eyes, Luofeng opened his and surprised Silver Eye. Luofeng claimed to have spent 10,000 eras in the Circle of Illusion, something impossible for ordinary beings. For Luofeng, this experience was actually an opportunity to hone his will, despite having suffered far worse for 6,000 years under the inheritance of life and death. He chose not to use the Tower Pearl to defend himself because he wanted to take advantage of this rare opportunity, and after an infinite amount of time in the illusion, his soul became even stronger. An impressed Silver Eye acknowledged that Luofeng had survived his 3 techniques and promised not to kill him. But Luofeng smiled and said it was Silver Eye's turn to receive his attack. Suddenly, one of Luofeng's world rings shattered, and an ancient purple clock appeared with the King Heavy Arrow inside that had already burned his divine body. The waves from the bell were seen attacking Silver Eye as fast as light, along with the 8 sealed star balls coated with Famo venom that Luofeng threw. The combined attack was so fast that Silver Eye did not have time to dodge. His body cracked and then immediately healed, but the 8 balls penetrated and began to erode his body. After the 8 balls flew back to Luofeng's palm, he immediately took the King Heavy Arrow and fled as fast as possible with his Shiwu Wing. Seeing this, Silver Eye's servant was angry because he felt that his master had been toyed with. But Silver Eye smiled and explained that he had attacked 3 times while Luofeng had only attacked once, so he did not feel aggrieved. Silver Eye, who felt the wounds on his body, did not care because they were only minor injuries, but suddenly he heard Luofeng's voice echoing. Luofeng offered the chance to obtain a Virtual Universe Anonymous account by exchanging 1 Virtual Universe Anonymous account for 1 treasure, and his servant would carry out the transaction 3 days later. Silver Eye, who was astonished, called Luofeng cunning and greedy, but he needed to consider whether the anonymous account was worth the rare treasure in Ice Hell. Meanwhile, the other creatures who witnessed the battle were amazed that Luofeng had survived Silver Stare, something that even the top 10 limit immortal kings couldn't do without burning their divine bodies. They agreed that Luofeng would soon occupy the 6th rank as the strongest below the 5 invincible immortal kings. In the snow cave, King Heavy Arrow, who was still shocked by the purple bell treasure, could only crack the Silver Eye's body, realizing how terrifying the invincible immortal king was, while Luofeng admitted that his attack with Fei Mo venom was like a mosquito bite to a special creature as large as Silver Eye, who had a constitution 100 times stronger. The powerful beings imprisoned in Ice Hell have a strong desire to connect with the outside world, and Luofeng will find out in 3 days whether Silver Eye accepts his offer. While waiting, he reflects on his battle and realizes that treasure is indeed very powerful when combined with the right secret techniques, as proven by his victory over King Lightning Racing. However, he regretted the scarcity of treasures in Ice Hell. Though the 12,000 imprisoned beings carried some treasures, almost all of them had been claimed by the top-ranked factions after a very long time. Even King Lightning Racing and King Whitebone, who were likely nearly as strong as King Seven Sword, would lose in a real battle because they lacked adequate equipment, unlike their opponents who had been specially trained by the clan with 7 swords, defense, escape, and golden pond. Luofeng realized that treasures were no less important than strength, even for a universe master, and was grateful that Master Zuoshan Ke had provided him with enough treasures so that he only needed to focus on strengthening his abilities. 3 days later, Luofeng used the demon race's method of hiding in the world ring and controlling a metal body to meet Silver Eye, while King Heavy Arrow, waited at the foot of the mountain with orders to flee if there were any problems. The metal body contained only a small amount of Luofeng's consciousness, so his real body was safe even if the substitute body was destroyed. After slowly climbing under the pressure of ice hell, Luofeng met an angry black-armored servant who thought Luofeng would send his servant instead of coming himself. In Silver Eye's magnificent palace, the power of the invincible Immortal King almost destroyed Luofeng's metal body, forcing him to ask Silver Eye to withdraw his power. Negotiations began with Silver Eye requesting 3 anonymous account censors, but Luofeng only offered 1, arguing that Silver Eye only needed one for himself and could lend it to friends if necessary. Luofeng also explained that the anonymous account was permanent and strictly monitored, and he could revoke access at any time even after it had been granted, but he would not do so because his reputation among humans was more valuable than a mere censor. Silver Eye, who was weak in negotiations, finally agreed to 1 censor, and Luofeng handed over the anonymous account censor. Shortly thereafter, Silver Eye tried the censor and connected to the virtual universe, finding 80,000 mock virtual accounts that Luofeng had created for him, with the scan function turned off so that his real figure would not be seen. Instead, a human dummy appeared that could be changed in size and shape. Silver Eye smiled, impressed by the virtual game played by trillions of creatures, then threw a 3-meter-long green axe as payment. Luofeng, delighted, said that Silver Eye was greedy but lucky because he would be training alone, and the other invincible immortal kings would have to satisfy him if they wanted to make transactions in the next 100 years. In fact, Silver Eye only had 2 treasures in Ice Hell, and the one he gave away was not the one he valued highly because his own technique was much stronger, while the anonymous account that gave him access to the bustling life of the virtual universe was actually more valuable after such a long period of loneliness. In the eastern Ice Hell Cave, Luofeng held a thin green axe like jade and laughed happily because his idea had worked. He had obtained a treasure more valuable than all the wealth he had gained from slaughtering creatures in the Star Tower. After feeling its power, he put the axe away and connected to the virtual universe to continue his training. In the virtual realm, Luofeng planned to improve his skills by creating second moves for Bright Moon Policy and Thousand Star Sermon Map, as well as a second move for Beast God 7 kills based on the second chapter and the Beast God concept he had already mastered. Although the second move was much more difficult to create, his higher level now enabled him to do so. However, just as he began and was about to face his opponent, the Chaos City Lord appeared, causing Luofeng to immediately greet him respectfully as his master. Luofeng was confused because the Chaos City Lord should have asked him to come after 10 battles, not 2 like now. When asked if he would create a second movement, Luofeng explained that the first movement, Bright Moon Policy and 10,000 Star Sermon Map, was not enough, so he needed to create a second one. The Chaos City Lord frowned and asked about his battles. Luofeng replied that he had almost won the first battle but lost the second. From that experience, he learned that power and treasure were equally important. Treasure could not be used to its fullest without sufficient power, and one would lose against an enemy of the same level if one did not have treasure. However, the Chaos City Lord suddenly scolded him loudly, accusing Luofeng of wasting his time following the path of a master controller. Although the reprimand struck his mind, Luofeng's will remained firm, and he argued that the path of a master controller made him stronger and was the right path for him. The Chaos City Lord urged Luofeng to give up the master controller path and focus on the warrior path by explaining 2 crucial reasons. First, Luofeng was a black warrior whose genes were in harmony with the beast god, so he could greatly enhance his genes using the blood of the beast god in the future. Genes were the foundation. If the foundation was 1,000 times stronger, how could enemies possibly fight back? Second, the beast god who had fallen in the Blood River continent concentrated on close-range combat, and the master controller would never reach the peak by following the beast god's path. Only by following the warrior path could Luofeng match the beast god's level and likely become a universe master, while following his own desires would make it nearly impossible to reach that level. Chaos City Lord mentioned several small clans that did not know this secret and tried both paths at once, which was ridiculous because they would never reach the peak, like Shiluo Duo. who was stuck in the final challenge forever. Luofeng fell silent in confusion as Chaos City Lord left. He contemplated the two choices available: the warrior path offered by the Chaos City Lord, following the Beast God who promised he would become a universe master like the Beast God himself, or the Master Controller path offered by Master Zuo Shan Qi, concentrating on the 9 Calamity Tome and mastering the Star Tower in the future. Considering that both of Zuo Shan Qi's disciples were universe masters and the Star Tower was one of the most powerful treasures. But suddenly Luofeng laughed and decided to follow both paths at once because each offered the opportunity to become a universe master. He was unlike others who dared to divide their focus between two different laws. Even though he appeared to be following the warrior and master controller paths, in essence he was following the Beast God path and could learn how to combine the two. When Luofeng conveyed his decision with eyes shining with conviction, the Chaos City Lord, who had been standing among the stars for a long time, replied calmly that he would say no more and would see how far Luofeng could develop with both paths. The Chaos City Lord nodded and said it was okay to make mistakes as long as Luofeng was diligent and put his heart into it, causing Luofeng to kneel in gratitude. He realized that the Chaos City Lord still supported him even against advice, even arranging opponent after opponent so that he could practice time-consuming secret techniques. Although the Chaos City Lord valued him because of his race, Luofeng was greatly indebted and promised to remember him and repay him someday. The training began with the golden-horned behemoth, replacing Luofeng, following the usual schedule with the Bright Moon policy and then the 10,000-star sermon map. Meanwhile, in Ice Hell, located in the Black Flower secret region in the far reaches of the universe, news of Luofeng's survival from the Finger of Death and Silver Stare and his escape began to spread slowly due to poor communication without an internal virtual world and hostility between powerful beings who rarely gathered. After more than half a year, only a third of the beings knew about Luofeng's prowess. In the magnificent snow palace of Southern Ice Hell, decorated with ice tablets engraved with demon race characters containing the Ice Hell rankings, lived the special being Skywolf, one of the 5 invincible immortal kings, editor of the rankings, and the most calm-tempered despite remaining deadly when provoked. The Skywolf, which transformed into a 15-kilometer-long mountain demon with snowy fur tipped with gold like a halo and 3 strange carvings shaped like scars on its forehead, suddenly raised its head and stared intently at its 5 scaly servants when it heard the news about the humans' battle half a year ago, then stood on its throne and ordered them to find that human immediately. 5 servants knelt silently before Skywolf, who realized that poor communication in Ice Hell meant that news always reached him late. He decided to create an ice tablet containing a new ranking that placed the human Luofeng in 6th place, just below the 5 invincible immortal kings: Blood Dog, Silver Eye, Skywolf himself, Black Wind, and Sion. However, to the servants' surprise, Skywolf did not make the ranking from the top as usual but left the top blank and wrote an important announcement in demon race characters. Anyone who brought the human to him would receive eternal protection, and he swore not to kill the human if he saw him, with the tablet as proof of his oath before the entire Ice Hell. 900 copies of the tablet were made and distributed to the mountains near the Ice Sea, which was a combat-free zone. The reward of protection from Skywolf, who was known to be calm and rarely attacked weak creatures, caused the entire Ice Hell to be in an uproar. 90% of the weak creatures who used to tiptoe around avoiding the 5 invincible immortal kings were now flocking to find Luofeng. The search lasted hundreds of years, but no one found Luofeng because his residence was hidden deep in the snow with microdetectors around it that made it undetectable to other creatures. While the enthusiasm for the search slowly faded, even though some weak warriors continued to search for the sake of a peaceful life, Luofeng sat on the island's beach, wearing black clothes while watching the waves. His golden-horned behemoth was in the inner world copying the beast god statue. 1,000 years had passed since his beast god conception reached the level of the 20th heavenly bridge, and although he thought it would be impossible to increase any further, progress continued to occur, albeit slowly. However, the gap between the 20th and 21st levels was enormous, requiring 10 times longer than the increase from the 19th to the 20th level. The beast god's conception was achieved by copying statues of various sizes and perceiving the complementary laws of the beast god conception. Perception was the roots and trunk, while conception was the branches, and only with deep enough roots and a thick enough trunk could the tree blossom. Time passed as the golden-horned behemoth concentrated on the beast god's 7 kills and understood the beast god concept through copying, while the human form studied the bright moon policy and 10,000 star sermon map. Chaos City Lord provided different opponents based on Luofeng's movement weaknesses, allowing him to refine his techniques and improve sharply until he was able to create new movements based on the second chapter on muscles with a comprehensive and magnificent application of the laws. It took Luofeng 1,600 years to create the second movement of the Bright Moon Policy, which combined sword movements and Shi Wu Wing into one powerful movement that could destroy any obstacle. However, he encountered difficulties with the 10,000 star sermon map. He initially thought he could create the second movement 10 times faster than the Bright Moon Policy because he already had experience, but it turned out to be much more difficult. The first movement was based on the simple first chapter, while the second movement came from the much more complicated second chapter. So the experience from the Bright Moon Policy could not be extrapolated simply because of the fundamental differences between the laws of close combat and mental weapon mastery. In the Palace of Thunder Island in the virtual universe, Luofeng reported to the Chaos City Lord that he had created the second move for both and asked for advice. The Chaos City Lord explained that creating the highest secret techniques was different from ordinary techniques. The mystery codes of close combat and spiritual weapons had fundamental differences that became more apparent the deeper one studied them. They could still refer to each other when creating the first or second move, but it was useless to start with the third and fourth moves. It would even slow down the fifth move, and it was impossible for the seventh move, which represented the power of a universe master. Although dissolving concentration could help in the beginning by complementing one code to another, at higher levels they would negatively influence each other and make it difficult to create additional moves. Powerful beings are not afraid of wasting time because they have eternal life, but they are afraid of losing the opportunity to reach the peak forever. Even though the Chaos City Lord warned Luofeng to change his mind when creating the fourth movement later, Luofeng remained adamant about his path. In the Eastern Ice Hell Cave, Luofeng finally opened his eyes after sitting cross-legged in the living room, losing the excitement he should have felt after creating a new movement, and instead filled with the intention to fight to prove that he was not wrong with his actual achievements. Luofeng left the cave and walked slowly across the snow, contemplating the differences in the power of the Universe Masters. Chaos City Lord was at the highest level, second brother Flame Emperor was at the middle level, and big brother Puti was at the lowest level. Yet all were admired by billions of clans in the universe. Flame Emperor did not possess treasures like the Star Tower, despite having 2 other treasures, while Puti's treasures were likely of lower value than those of Flame Emperor. The Star Tower, which triggered the war between the top 4 clans, was able to stand firm on the battlefield outside the domain while continuing to consume energy to create 9 vortex nebulae that could easily tear apart universe venerables. According to Zuoshan Ke, when Luofeng became a universe venerable and collected the last piece of Heavenly Soul Crystal for the 9 Calamity Tome, he was almost able to operate the entire Star Tower and gain speaking authority equivalent to that of a universe master. The core of each element of the star map was a soul-controlling item that was extremely valuable, far surpassing both the Tower Pearl and the Sealed Star. The more Luofeng reflected on his situation, the more he became convinced that he was on the right path as a master controller or in mental master. Despite the Chaos City Lord's warning that pursuing both paths would result in failing to create the 7th move, Luofeng kept reminding himself of his original motivation as he walked in the snow. Because even though he remained steadfast in front of his master and himself, the Chaos City Lord was one of the 3 strongest humans in the universe, and his words had a huge impact. Luofeng's steadfastness was not only because of his self-confidence, but also because Zuoshan Ke was stronger than the Chaos City Lord. Without his master, he would have pondered the words of the Chaos City Lord for a long time. Meanwhile, the metal creature hid behind the ice tablet at the top of the ice mountain, saw a faint shadow in the distance, and then flew closer. The metal creature, with a metallic sheen covering its entire body, ruby-like eyes, and a cheetah-like hunched body standing on 2 legs, found strange footprints in the snow. After realizing they were human footprints, I was delighted to be the first to find them. and I no longer had to live in fear. The metal creature named Ka Tuo, ranked 626, dived towards Luofeng, who suddenly turned around and recognized it, then decided to test the second move of his 10,000 star sermon map. 52 black balls appeared from Luofeng's left hand, connected by thousands of golden threads, forming a 1,000-meter-long beast god with scales all over its body. The combination of 52 sealed stars, powerful secret techniques, and a stronger beast god conception after 2,000 years produced an extraordinarily magnificent power that made millions of square kilometers of space tremble. Katuo, who had been jubilant, was almost scared to death and teleported away hundreds of thousands of kilometers, shouting that he meant no harm and had come on behalf of Skywolf. Satisfied with the power of his move, Luofeng read the ranking tablet Katuo had handed him and saw Skywolf's reward for promising not to kill him in public. Luofeng decided to go to Skywolf's palace in the southern Ice Hell, guided by Katuo, who was very excited to be the first to discover the human. At the palace guarded by 7 servants, Luofeng was brought in after the servants recognized him and told Katuo that he would receive eternal protection from the master. Skywolf, whose body was more than 10 kilometers long, sat on a throne that resembled an elephant in size compared to an ant when juxtaposed with the golden-horned behemoth. After confirming that Katuo had brought the human, Skywolf granted him protection so that no one would dare touch him around the palace, making Katuo, who was ranked below 600 and had to live in fear, tremble with joy. After Katuo left with gratitude, the palace doors closed, leaving only Skywolf's servants behind. Luofeng looked at Skywolf on the throne and asked him to say what he wanted now that it was just the two of them with the servants. Skywolf looked at Luofeng from his throne with amused eyes, then explained that he wanted to purchase an anonymous account sensor because he had a strong desire to connect to the outside world after being confined for so long. Luofeng reminded him that they came from hostile races, humans and demons, so the virtual universe would reject Skywolf's consciousness. However, Skywolf argued that his 2 servants were from a race related to humans and could access it, even though the previous sensor had been revoked of its access authority because it had been detected by highly sensitive monitors. Skywolf admitted his intention to escape through the spy intelligence system built by the demon race, even though it was difficult to detect and high risk, but he still wanted to try. He offered a treasure as payment, taking out a black stone staff with beautiful carvings on both sides that radiated power throughout the palace. Skywolf argued that selling a sensor was a common occurrence in the human race, with many even being secretly purchased by the demon race, and that this was not treason because Luofeng was only selling an account without helping to send messages. Luofeng, who was quietly assessing the price, continued to refuse the offer of 1 treasure. Skywolf, growing increasingly frustrated, stood up from his throne aggressively and increased his offer to 2 treasures, including the one he was currently using. He argued that sensors were easy to obtain in the human world and that selling just 1 would not threaten anyone because he had no ill intentions towards the human race. However, Luofeng still shook his head in refusal, making Skywolf even angrier and roaring that these 2 treasures could hire the universe venerable to kill the strongest of the human race, and he was not asking for betrayal but only a censor. Throughout Ice Hell, even invincible immortal kings like himself or Silver Eye had a maximum of 3 treasures, and he was willing to give up the 2 most important and suitable ones while keeping only 1, but Luofeng still refused. Skywolf's anger exploded as he vanished from his throne and reappeared directly in front of Luofeng, glaring at him with hostility. Meanwhile, Luofeng, who had already spread his wings and was holding 52 black balls, stood at a distance, reminding Skywolf of his promise to the entire Ice Hell not to kill him. Skywolf argued hoarsely, teeth bared, that this damn human was blocking his escape and therefore deserved to die. However, Luofeng calmly explained that killing him would not grant him the sensor access authority, rendering him useless. Furthermore, Skywolf could not kill him because even Silver Eye, an expert in the law of time, had failed to do so. Skywolf, whose strength lay in the law of space, could not match Luofeng's speed. The 2 powerful beings stared at each other from a distance, Skywolf full of hostility and Luofeng full of calm. Skywolf finally calmed down and realized that Luofeng's status was probably high enough that it was easier for him to obtain treasures outside and that the 2 treasures were not attractive to him. In a deep voice, he offered the most important treasure he had. Not the two previous treasures, but a more valuable replacement. Skywolf took out a hexagonal stone tablet the size of a human palm with a roaring beast engraved on its surface. The engraving made Luofeng's heart tremble, even though he had seen various strange beasts like those on the 9-universe Primal Chaos tablet and beast gods. Luofeng pretended to be indifferent, calling it an ordinary stone tablet with a special shape and engraving. But Skywolf stared at him sharply and asked Luofeng to put his will into the tablet to understand its value. This was the beast god's inheritance token from the most powerful Ancestral God Sect, something that even the universe venerables fought over. Though it was not as valuable as an invaluable treasure that could drive them crazy, but it was far more valuable than ordinary treasures. Luofeng, who was a little confused about the Ancestral God Sect, was intrigued by the beast god's inheritance token and asked to see it. But Skywolf, who was overly cautious, asked him to only examine it with divine power while keeping the token until an agreement was reached. When Luofeng infused invisible spiritual power into the hexagonal stone, he felt as if he had entered an ancient world that provided information that this was a token for the law of merging land and space, taking him to the land of inheritance to receive the beast god's inheritance if he met the requirements. Luofeng was a little disappointed because he practiced the law of merging gold and space, but asked for time to think. Skywolf, who had been waiting long enough, agreed to give him time while continuing to stare at him, while Luofeng connected himself to the virtual universe to search for information. In his virtual universe manner, Luofeng searched for information about the Ancestral God Sect with his access authority, which had been updated after he successfully escaped from the World Master Level Primal Sky Mountain. He read that the Ancestral God Sect was the most powerful organization in the universe, as old as the universe itself, with the highest level belonging to the 3 legendary ancestral gods. Its structure consisted of 3 ancestral gods, 8 beast gods, 72 holy deified generals, and 3,000 prophets with a fixed number for each position. Unless an original beast god died, there would be no new beast gods. There were 3 forms of inheritance: prophet, deified general, and beast god as the highest level, with each beast god being a universe master. Hundreds of millions of races follow the path of the beast gods, and some receive their inheritance to reach the level of beast god. But they cannot become true beast gods unless the original dies, because once one becomes a true beast god, their power increases dramatically. The Ancestral God Sect is open, does not participate in power struggles, or require vast territories because it only has about 3,000 members, and its inheritance is spread throughout the universe to be accepted by the rightful ones. Luofeng was amazed to read that despite its small number of members, the Ancestral God Sect surpassed the 6 peak races with its elite strategy. The Prophet's inheritance crystals floated randomly throughout the universe. The deified general's inheritance land remained in a specific area, while the beast god's inheritance land was controlled by the Ancestral God Sect and required a token to enter. There were 8 tokens for the 8 laws of fusion, representing the 8 paths of the beast god: gold space, wood space, earth space, light time, wind time, and thunder time. The rule for humans was that if they found a token, they could keep it for themselves or hand it over to be exchanged for treasure worth the token, or even another more suitable token. Luofeng realized that today was Skywolf's unlucky day because he could exchange the Earth Space token for the Gold Space token he needed. At Skywolf's palace, Luofeng finally agreed to the transaction, but Skywolf, who wanted to return to his clan as an invincible immortal king with sufficient wealth, asked to check the anonymous account sensor first before giving the token. The hesitant Luofeng finally agreed, and Skywolf, full of enthusiasm, imagined himself being valued by the clan and possibly becoming an unusual universe venerable thanks to his power. Skywolf ordered the 6-winged female servant to test the connection to the virtual universe, while Luofeng secretly monitored everything with high access authority as a disciple of the Chaos City Lord and one of the top talents of the human race. Luofeng had actually built a local area network for that anonymous account so that only he could use it. All the virtual game players and people in the bar were simulations that even he couldn't distinguish from the real thing. The female servant entered the 3rd game, which had been operating for 30,000 years. then transferred a small amount of money from the first bank of the universe's anonymous account to herself before releasing a bounty mission throughout the game and exiting after a while. However, there was no response, causing Skywolf to roar angrily and accuse Luofeng of toying with him. Luofeng stared at Skywolf's giant form and admitted that he was indeed toying with him, but Skywolf was also cheating by trying to send messages to the demon race while testing the connection. Luofeng, who was not stupid, would not allow Skywolf to connect to the virtual universe without receiving the token first, and he realized Skywolf's cunning plan to publish a bounty mission in a virtual game played by countless players. Among them might be spies that the virtual universe system could not detect. If Skywolf succeeded in sending the message and received a response, he would have achieved his goal without having to give the inheritance token to Luofeng. Skywolf, who was indeed a member of the royal family of the notoriously cruel and cunning demon race, despite often disguising himself as friendly in Ice Hell, finally fell silent because his plan had been exposed. Luofeng, who was playing with his cards on the table, now asked Skywolf to give him the token first before he gave him the sensor. But Skywolf refused vehemently because he was afraid that Luofeng, who was known for being clever, would run away with the token. Skywolf finally looked at Luofeng hesitantly, unable to think of any other way to gain the trust of this cunning and cautious human. After Luofeng threatened to leave with a rhetorical question about the use of the token. If Skywolf could never get out of Ice Hell, Skywolf finally gave in reluctantly and threw the token while roaring that he would make all the creatures in Ice Hell hunt Luofeng if it turned out to be fake. Luofeng, who caught the heavy hexagonal tablet, sensed its extraordinary nature and thought he could exchange it for another token that was more suitable or even a special inheritance that might be far more valuable than the inheritance of the deified General Demon Note. After giving Skywolf's female servant access to connect to the virtual universe, Luofeng also connected himself to Monitor while remembering his previous meeting with the Primal Chaos City leader. In the Palace of the Thunder Island virtual universe, Luofeng had visited the Primal Chaos City leader after reading information about the Ancestral God Sect and the token. The Master, who was surprised that Luofeng had just obtained a series of treasures, now also had a token that was just as valuable, a token representing the opportunity to enter the Ancestral God Sect. Luofeng explained that he went to the Black Flower secret region to train and considered Ice Hell a practice ground, even though there were 5 powerful, invincible Immortal Kings, because they had few treasures, especially defensive treasures. His initial plan was to train until he completed the 3rd chapter of Beast God's 7 Kills, so that he could use the 2nd form of Shi Wu Wing, which could interfere with space, making even Universe Venerables unable to seal it. By becoming the fastest and invincible, he was confident that he could suppress and injure the invincible Immortal Kings one by one. However, after finding the Beast God token from the Skywolf, he couldn't bear to wait another 10,000 years in Ice Hell and wanted to immediately leave for the Inheritance Land to become stronger. Luofeng asked his master for advice on 2 plans. First, to escape after obtaining the token, or second, to let Skywolf connect and send a message so that the demon race would appear and his master would also come. The Primal Chaos City leader, who saw that Luofeng's mind was set on the Land of Inheritance, agreed to let Skywolf send a message because even though he was now the invincible Immortal King, Skywolf had once been weak, so the demon race would not fully believe him, and it would be impossible to send a Universe Master to rescue him. Even if a Universe Master was sent, the Master could defeat him, but Luofeng had to get the token first just in case the demon race sent a Universe Master to protect Skywolf. The token was indeed very valuable. The Primal Chaos City leader, who roamed the universe, was even willing to slaughter others to obtain this invaluable treasure, so the token was worth fighting for. The Master, who felt that Luofeng was very lucky, agreed that he should not waste 10,000 years in Ice Hell and go to the Land of Inheritance that might give him another reward, even though he was a little disturbed by Luofeng's choice to follow the path of both Master Controller and Warrior. At Skywolf's palace, tension filled the room as Skywolf looked at his servant expectantly. The 6-winged female servant tested the virtual universe connection with the quantum computer given to her by Luofeng, and after a few moments that felt like centuries to Skywolf, the servant opened her eyes and confirmed that someone had responded to the message. Skywolf, who had been as calm as an iceberg, suddenly erupted like a volcano. He roared with joy because the response meant that his message had been forwarded to his master, and he would soon be released from the eternal prison of Ice Hell. Laughing triumphantly, Skywolf let Luofeng leave with the Beast God's inheritance token, planning to take it back after the great beings of his race arrived to pick him up. He ordered his servants to remain vigilant and not celebrate too loudly so that the Purple Venerable, who oversaw Ice Hell, would not become suspicious. He then gazed at the boundless world of ice outside his palace, imagining the freedom that was soon to come. Luofeng, who had teleported back to his hideout deep within the snow of Eastern Ice Hell with King Heavy Arrow, felt immense joy after his master obtained the Beast God's inheritance token. He was even more amazed to learn that the Ancestral God Sect was so powerful that it possessed all 8 Beast Gods, and he remembered King Seven Sword's golden pond, which was engraved with various Beast Gods. Perhaps King Seven Sword had also received a special inheritance from the legendary sect. Luofeng couldn't wait to go to the inheritance land to see what it was like, but he had to wait for the arrival of the great demon race creature summoned by Skywolf. Smiling as he gazed at the sky, he wondered if that great creature was strong enough to match his master, the primal Chaos City leader, who was already preparing to arrive, or if it would fall victim to the trap they had planned together to capture the demon race spy who was trying to use the intelligence network in the human virtual universe. News of Skywolf, Sibowa's real name, reached the demon race's territory on the prosperous planet where his old universe venerable master lived. The 2-meter-long blue-furred Skywolf was very happy in his peaceful palace because his third disciple, who had been missing, was still alive and had even become the invincible Immortal King without any help or resources in the harsh ice hell. The master, who had once believed that Sibowa could become a universe venerable, felt that his prediction had been proven correct. If his disciple had remained in the clan and received adequate resources, he would have become a universe venerable long ago. After informing his other disciples, he had to go take care of something. The venerable universe disappeared into the depths of the demon race's territory to report to the clan leader, who was much more powerful. He knew that his own abilities were not enough to save his disciple from the ice hell, guarded by the purple venerable and the green venerable, especially the purple venerable, who was one of the deified generals of the Ancestral God Sect. In the depths of the demon race's territory, a palace floated among the stars, surrounded by rainbow-colored flames the size of stars that twisted space and time until it was separated from the outside universe. The universe venerable Skywolf knelt in the vast courtyard of the fireball-shaped palace to report to the clan leader about Sibowa, who had been on the Turning Back Time rescue list but failed to be rescued because his soul was suspected of being controlled by a powerful being. The leader, shocked to hear that the disciple had now become the warrior invincible Immortal King, decided to come himself because Venerable Skyflower, the second strongest in the clan, was in a dangerous place and could not be contacted. The giant fireballs suddenly flew into the palace and shrank into small tongues of flame that merged with the fire carvings inside the palace, making the aura inside even stronger. This was one of the invaluable treasures that the Skywolf clan had possessed since the universe was first formed. The entire palace then disappeared, leaving the blue universe venerable floating alone among the stars, confident that Sibowa would be safely rescued by the clan's powerful leader. So what happens next? Let's wait and see in the next video, guys. Okay, thank you for watching until the end, and don't forget to support this channel with likes, subscribe, and comments. That's all from me. Bye.
银色眼眸一旦睁开，
这两条路，我该如何抉择？
便几乎代表着陨落。
该轮到我了。
将在去，绝望中沉沦。